Mic check, 1, 2. Great, lovely. All right, sorry for the delayed start, but let's get started. This is the Climate Justice Through International Law, high-level dialogue on the proposal for an advisory opinion from the International Court of Justice. So if this is not the room you're supposed to be in, this is where we are. All right, so I am Kalain Hussein. I am a weather anchor and journalist from Trinidad and Tobago. That's in the Caribbean. I've been covering weather, climate, and the environment for the last 3 years. So fairly new to the field, and this is also my first COP. So let's just jump right into this because we're also pressed for time. So I'm delighted this afternoon to welcome you to this high-level panel of distinguished guests and speakers this afternoon. And we are here to discuss an initiative led by the government of Vanuatu to request an advisory opinion from the International Court of Justice on how existing international laws can be applied to strengthen action on climate change. Now, the aim of this initiative is to strengthen and accelerate states' implementation of the Paris Agreement, build global resilience to climate change impacts, and advance action to ensure intergenerational equity. Now, should the UN General Assembly agree to this resolution, the court's opinion is expected to have far-reaching implications for climate change litigation and international disputes on climate harm. So to discuss all of this, we have quite a panel, so I'm pleased to introduce them, starting off with His Excellency Nike Vurubaravu, the President of Vanuatu. Welcome, sir. I'll introduce the rest of the panel first, and then I'll introduce her. Yeah. It's okay. We're all excited to speak today. Next up is the Secretary General of the Commonwealth, the Right Honourable Patricia Scotland King's Counsel. We have His Excellency, or we were supposed to have His Excellency Sir Angel Whipps Jr., the President of Palau. We have the Prime Minister of the Bahamas, the Honourable Philip Davis King's Counsel. Dr. Christopher Bartlett, the head of the International Climate Diplomacy. There we go. Hi, come on in. Right here. So let's welcome His Excellency Sir Angel Whipps Jr., the President of Palau. We also have Dr. Christopher Bartlett, the head of the International Climate Diplomacy in the government of Vanuatu. And last but certainly not least, Elizabeth Wathuti, the Kenyan environment and climate activist and the founder of the Green Generation Initiative. Some of you may have remembered her from COP26 when she delivered such a great speech. So let's jump right into this right away. I'd like to call on the President of Vanuatu, His Excellency Nike Vurubaravu, to tell us more about this new development. Your Excellency, why is this a critical initiative for Vanuatu? What is this all about?
Thank you very much, MC. Your Excellencies, distinguished delegates this evening. Climate change and the protection of the rights from the climate crisis is a very important issue for all of us. It is clear that the climate change negotiations process over the last 30 years has moved at a pace that does not reflect the devastations experienced every day in our communities by our families. Our most vulnerable are just being impacted. Their fundamental human rights are being undermined. Lives are just being lost. This is a crisis that I and my family are experiencing firsthand in Vanuatu. On my island of Malo, in the northern Vanuatu. We plant yams this month, in the month of November every year. This month coincides with the beginning of the cyclone season. We do this so that by the time the critical yam vines start to grow, the cyclones season, making our yams incredibly vulnerable to destruction. When my island faced a direct hit by a Category 5 cyclone, Harold, just a few years ago, we lost the entire crop of our staple food. It is not acceptable that the brick walls of my family house on my islands was also completely destroyed during the last Category 5 cyclone. Humanitarian and aid did not cover this devastation, nor do we have insurance products available in remote islands like Vanuatu. Families are left to bear the brunt of the problems caused by others. The 1.5 degree threshold for safe communities and sound human rights. That is why, ladies and gentlemen, Vanuatu, alongside a global coalition of parties to the Paris Agreement, launching a thing at the United Nations to seek a set of international laws in which state parties have already agreed to obligation to prevent activities that cause significant harm. However, what is lacking is clarifications how these existing treaties and obligations can be applied to motivate climate action, and in an initiative spearheaded by Vanuatu seeking an advisory opinion from the International Court of Justice. I wish to particularly in this regard, I wish to acknowledge particularly Palau for helping us to lead this initiative 10 years ago.
We are going to take this case all the way.
We are going to take this case all the way.
And we seek the support of all nations.
We seek the support of all nations.
We will raise ambitious NDCs.
We will raise ambitious NDCs.
And we will protect human rights of all people.
We will protect the human rights of all people.
Let me thank you all for your support.
And let me thank you all for your support. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. So I'd just get right along, and I'd like to ask the Right Honourable Patricia Scotland, King's Counsel, Secretary General of the Commonwealth, to please deliver her keynote address. You would like to come in?
Your Excellencies, I'd like to start by saying, dear friends, and what an extraordinary array we have in front of us. His Excellency, the President of Palau, who I last saw in Fiji. Wonderful to see you. My dear and close friend, the Prime Minister of Bahamas. The wonderful speech we've just had from His Excellency, the President of Vanuatu. then the youth represented so wonderfully by Kenya, and then we have the scientific good sense that comes on the panel. But what you see before you is really a high quality representation of the Commonwealth and friends. And we have to understand that we really need our friends at the moment, because what Vanuatu's president has just described so eloquently is the reality for many of our member states. The Commonwealth has 56 member states, 33 of them are small, and 25 are small island developing states. Since 1989, the Commonwealth has been clear. When we met in Langkawi, in Malaysia, that climate change was an existential threat. And if we didn't do something about it, we would have all the consequences we've seen in the last 30 years. And I think it's important that we listen to actually the pain that is being experienced by our families who are losing their lives and losing their livelihoods. And so perhaps I should just put it in context as to why I absolutely understand the position of our small states. Many of you will know that I hail from the small but beautiful island of Dominica in the Caribbean. Dominica was hit first by Tropical Storm Erica in 2015, losing 95% of our GDP. Then again by Maria in 2017, using 226% of our GDP. And that hurricane was the biggest the world had ever seen until Dorian hit the Bahamas and devastated it. So on this panel, we have people who not only understand the devastation of the Commonwealth and the devastation that comes from climate change, we've tasted it and we understand it, and our families have experienced it. I suppose I haven't shared this before, but in Dominica, my family lost every single home they had. And many still haven't rebuilt because of the time it takes. So this issue is critically important from our world. And if you look at what's happened to Pakistan, Pakistan has 33 million people displaced. 16 million of those are children. $40 billion worth of damage. And the place underwater is bigger than the size of the United Kingdom. So this is Armageddon. So anyone who doesn't believe that this is an existential threat, then they need to look at the facts. So what Vanuatu is doing now, by asking for this decision, this advisory opinion from the ICJ, can really be understood. Because what we need is clarity. There's been a lot of dispute, a lot of debate. And now we're going to have a legal opinion. And the issue for the Commonwealth is that we always believe that where there is dispute and dissension and disagreement, then the place you should go for clarification is the ICJ. Because then the ICJ can listen to all the arguments for and any arguments against, and then we will have clarity. So I'm not surprised when I looked at the list of countries signing up to this initiative that they were predominantly the Commonwealth countries, because they come from the global south and they are those who are suffering the most. But what I would say to everyone, whichever side of this argument you are on, sign up, support the request for the ICJ's determination, because whether you are for or against, the only way we will get clarity is if we have a determination by the court. So I really want to congratulate all the countries who are pushing for this. I know Palau, you were first, supporting Vanuatu, and I know that all the countries out there want to have the answer to this question. And I think we have no more time. We're at code red, and we need to move, and we need to move now.
Thank you very much, Madam Secretary General. And moving right along to His Excellency Sir Angel Whipps Jr. on why this initiative to seek an advisory opinion from the International Court of Justice is important to Palau and other small island states.
Ali, and good afternoon. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen. You know, I said yesterday that the torture must stop. For Palau, just like any other state, it's the storms that destroy our homes, it's the water that disappears with droughts, it's the high temperatures, it's killing our jellyfish. It's every single way you look at it, it is real and it's happening. And I agree totally with Vanuatu when he says we're moving at a very slow pace. We need action. And I think sometimes to get action, to get clarity, we need the rule of law and our court systems to help us clear that up, that issue up. This initiative is about asking for clarity, but asking for justice. It's time that we hold the biggest emitters accountable and responsible for the effects of climate change, and that we come up with solutions and change our behaviors and change our actions. So I'm here to support Vanuatu in carrying this torch. We have a saying in Palau that goes like this. It says, "Ik kamu." And this saying goes when the canoe builders go to the forest and cut down the tree. And when they cut down the tree and it falls in the taro swamp, it's very hard to pull it out. So you need one voice and everybody chanting together to say "Ik kamu" to pull it out of the taro swamp and get it carved into a canoe. And I think that's what we need as the Commonwealth states and all small island states working together to bring these issues forward. I just want to share that Palau joined our friends from Tuvalu and Barbados, Barbuda, Antigua and Barbuda on the initiative for COSIS, which is the same issue. We must hold those who are causing this destruction accountable. And really to hopefully help them change behavior. Because we can only do so much as island states. We preserve our oceans. We protect our forests. We're doing everything we can to reduce our carbon emissions. But we can only do so much. We need to do it together. And Vanuatu, thank you for leading the way. And we're behind you 100%. Thank you.
Alrighty, so we'll move now to the scientists on the panel, Dr. Bartlett. Where is Vanuatu in this whole process, and can you explain to us what happens next?
Thank you very much. So just to give you an update on where we are, today is actually a very exciting day because today is the day where the resolution that will be put before the UN General Assembly is finalized in New York. Vanuatu has assembled a coalition of 18 nations who have been drafting this resolution for more than a year. Those nations include members from the Caribbean, from Africa, from Asia, from the Pacific, and from Europe. We are so pleased that today they have agreed on the text, which will be maximally appealing to as many UN member states as possible. And the question in summary, and you'll all be able to read the actual question in the next few days when it becomes public, but in summary is what are the legal obligations of states to prevent significant harm to the climate system and communities under international law. And the international laws that we're looking at very specifically would be things like the 2 covenants on rights, the law of the sea, the rights, the Convention of the Rights of the Child, CEDAW, the Bill of Rights of Women, the Charter of the United Nations itself, as well as principles under international law, such as the principle of due diligence and the principle to prevent harm to the marine environment. And we're asking the court to review the obligations and how they could be applied to addressing what we've heard is a devastating climate crisis. We're not expecting that this would automatically lead to anything like compensation or reparations. That is absolutely not the intention of this initiative. Rather, the intention is to inspire all states to use maximal ambition so that we can reduce emissions, keep the planet below 1.5 degrees, and protect fundamental human rights. So with that, I think we would all like to see the question. There is a website, it's vanuatuicj.com. And in the next few days, certainly at this COP, the world will be able to see the question that will be voted on, likely in December or January, by the membership of the General Assembly. All states will have an opportunity over the next 3 weeks to provide feedback and comments on the question, which may be incorporated before it goes to the actual vote. That means all states, whether you're concerned or not concerned about legal obligations, you will be able to provide input into this very important question. So far, the coalition has achieved endorsement of 86 nations. So the 18 that have been drafting and another large group from the Africa, Caribbean, Pacific, Asia, and Europe, Latin America, have now given their endorsement to the process. So the requirement for a simple majority in the UN General Assembly is very nearly met. So with that, thank you so much.
Alrighty, looking forward to see what that question is. So now we're moving on to Prime Minister Davis. What would this opinion from the ICJ mean for your nation and the implementation of the Paris Agreement?
Thank you very much. For my country, let me just start off by saying to you here, as I stand here at this very moment, my islands are being battered by a hurricane, Nicole. My capital city of Nassau is being assaulted by seas above 20 feet and is taking a battering right now. Flooding has been extreme on the mainland, and the irony is that this hurricane is taking the same track as Dorian that we had three years ago. So I'm here wondering what is happening at home. The damage and loss that will be occasioned by this will have to be borne by my country, by us, from our resources. And how am I going to fund the recovery and reconstruction as a result? I'm going to have to go to international agencies, to lending institutions, and guess what? Borrow more to be heaped on my already overburdened debt, all because of the consequence of climate change. So where are we? We've been talking for years as to who ought to be responsible for these consequences. Loss and damage, though I've always argued, was part of the concept of mitigation and adaptation, because at the end of the day, it all has to do with avoiding loss, maintaining damage. At the end of the day, when we take it from there, the next question is liability. Who then pays for it? Who then is made to account for and compensate for the loss and damage? Sadly, after 30 years of talking, what do we have? We have it on the agenda, but they exclude the question of liability. So I don't want to say the bad actors, or should I say the countries that are responsible for the emitters around the world, the multinational companies that depend on fossil fuel to earn their major profits. We hear about the oil industry earning about, $3 million a day in profits, and perhaps 52 trillion was the last numbers I saw. Are they to be made responsible? And they keep kicking the can down the road. And so, for me, and for my country, an advisory opinion will settle some questions. Questions such as, in legal terms, we call it locus standi. Who will have the right to initiate actions in the local courts or even in one of the other international agency? Who would be made responsible? Those are some of the questions that could be resolved from this advisory opinion that's being sought. And at the end of the day, it could pave the way for the proper litigation against some of the oil companies maybe. And let us not think about it, because I think there are persuasive precedents. And I say persuasive because it may not be on all fours, but you know about it, what I call the tobacco litigation. Tobacco was considered to be a harmless habit for persons until it was discovered that smoking could result in harm to your body, in particular cancer. And what happened? So class action suits began springing up, and tobacco industry was made to account and pay for the consequences of their manufacturing, promoting, and sale of tobacco. So if we, as I say, persuasive authority to suggest that if the oil company, if we continue to produce oil, if we continue to cause, to increase our carbon footprint, and the result of that is the loss and damage we're suffering, should we not consider using that as persuasive authority to suggest that emitters ought to pay for the loss and damage? And so I welcome, and we will be endorsing and supporting the resolution for the advisory opinion. We're also considering how we can, from even whilst this opinion is being done, how we could commence and institute litigation against one or two of the oil companies, and to see where it leads us. And see where it leads us. Because I'm here now wondering about what is this going to cost me when I get home. I'm hoping I lose no lives. I know we'll have damage, flooding and wind damage. But what is that going to cost me? Infrastructural damage. And I have to go looking for resources to recover. And why? Because of the act of others that produces the catastrophe that we in our small island states suffer. So I welcome the initiative. We must continue to look at how we, as small island states, could protect ourselves and find alternative means of financing our damage and loss until we get to where we need to be, ensuring that we're talking about compensation and reparations. That's where it may have to be at the end of the day. Because most of your debt today, I'm certain you could relate, you can tie to having to borrow funds to reconstruct, to bring back your country and economy to normalcy. If you profiling my debt, you heard about the Hurricane Dorian. It cost us in loss and damage $3.4 billion. You heard what happened in Dominica. It wiped out their complete GDP. And they have to survive, they have to get back. As I reminded the parties yesterday, if there's no action, first of all, for me, the ambition to maintain 1.5 degrees, to stay alive, that concept is on life support. Whether we'll achieve that is very doubtful now, because, in fact, over the last year, we're seeing an increase in the use of fossil fuel and coal. And the excuse, of course, is the geopolitical turmoil that we are now experiencing. And for me, we will be climate refugees. Or the alternative will be, as was said in Hamlet, we'll be condemned to watery graves if nothing is happening or nothing is done in quick time. So I welcome the initiative. We will be endorsing the initiative, and we'll be looking at how we can make those who are responsible accountable and make sure they write the check. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister. And you have no idea how connected the Caribbean is. That same system, Nicole, flooded St. Lucia a couple of days ago. And right now, Trinidad and Tobago is currently also being flooded. I saw pictures of my home just now underwater, and people are in boats right now trying to get away from washed away roads and all of that. And that's happening right now. Same with Tropical Storm Nicole. So moving right along to Ms. Wathuti. Does this ICJ proposal resonate with what you think young people want?
Thank you so much for inviting me to this very important panel with many distinguished leaders. This year, I am here at COP27 with a delegation of 35 young climate leaders from across the African continent. And the reason we are here at this COP is because we are horrified and heartbroken witnessing the devastating impacts caused by climate inaction to our people. And right now, we are facing the worst prolonged drought across the African continent that has seen over 20 million people across the Horn of Africa facing climate-related starvation. And we have also seen what is happening across West and Central Africa, where millions of people are also affected by the ongoing devastating floods. So we are here because we want to do everything within our power to deliver climate justice to our people. And we are also here in solidarity with other frontline communities, including the small island developing states who have been calling for climate justice since before we were born. You have been pioneers for many decades. It was small island states that first raised the issue and called for the need of UN climate convention. And it was also the small island states that first called for action on loss and damage 30 years ago. So I want to acknowledge your role in creating this space for frontline communities, and also this space for the most affected generations, for us to continue advocating for climate justice. More and more, we know that COP is becoming a space where young people are being invited to speak. And our voices are helping advance some of the issues such as loss and damage, which the small island developing states have campaigned for years. But we also know that this is a space where the conversation can be far, far too low, and it's actually terrifyingly slow right now. And we're worried that lives and livelihoods that are at stake with this crisis will continue to be devastated if urgent action is not taken, if honesty and responsibility in some of these forums is not taken. So we are doing everything we can to sound the alarm, but the leaders here seem unable to hear us. But we will not give up, and we will do whatever it takes within our power and within our capacity until they hear us. And as young people, we will keep taking to the streets. We will keep doing everything that we can to make sure that the leaders hear us. And with this campaign, small island developing states are taking the climate crisis to the International Court of Justice. We will raise our voices in every available space until we have gotten climate justice, because this is the time that climate justice is direly needed, because it's a life or death situation for the most affected people and regions. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you very much, Elizabeth. And now we'd like to excuse President Sir Angel Whips. I understand you have another event to go to, packed schedule. All right, so thank you so much for participating on this panel. All righty, so now I'd like to open it up for questions for any of the wonderful panelists that we have right now. Raise hands if you have one. We do have this event streamed as well, so any questions coming in online, feel free, it'll be asked. Sure.
Thank you very much. My name is Salim Ul Haq. I'm from Bangladesh. I'd like to congratulate the President of Vanuatu and the other heads of countries here for taking this very bold initiative. In the UNFCCC, we have taken this issue of loss and damage as far as we can, but we have to build everything by consensus. The polluters are sitting across the table, and if they don't agree to something, then we cannot get an agreement. Fortunately, here in COP27, we got them to agree to adopt an agenda item. So we do make progress, but it takes a long time. So we need to look at other things, and I'd like to congratulate Vanuatu for taking this to the General Assembly, where we can win with a majority of votes, and hopefully we will get that during the... Can I just ask perhaps for a clarification on what the expectation of the opinion would be? Are there other similar opinions that have been given in the past, and what has happened with them? Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much, Salim, for the question. So, as you know, the International Court of Justice will undergo a process whereby every UN member state can come to the court in The Hague and plead their case. They can provide their own evidence and their own testimony, how they see international obligations being applied to climate change. And then the International Court of Justice will provide a non-binding guidance on the question that was asked. And so the expectation then is that that advisory opinion can be used by all nations to increase their ambition. Other advisory opinions have been incredibly useful. You know, the International Court of Justice has provided advisory opinions on denuclearization. They've provided opinions on decolonialization. And those opinions are very active in shaping behavior of states. And so the expectation is that hopefully, by the time we come to the next COP, we're not talking about those things that are non-negotiable legal obligations, and we can move forward with the decisions that are absolutely required.
Do we have any more questions? What's the best way to get this to you?
Thank you very much, Your Excellencies. Thank you for your powerful words about this legal action for future generations. And thank you, Ms. Watuti, for your equally excellent words on behalf of the youth that you represent. But with your indulgence, I'd like to ask another question of Dr. Bartlett. Dr. Bartlett, it's wonderful to see you again since I last saw you 3 years ago in Vanuatu. I want to focus on the observation you made about nearly simple majority is in support. I fully understand the goal of having maximum ambition and that your aim was to, if I recall correctly, the maximum, make it maximally appealing to all nations. And I understand how difficult it is to reach consensus. So the fact that all of you were able to do this in just 1 year is amazing, given how long we've been debating these issues in COPs now, our 27th COP. But would you speak to the decision to go forward at this point as compared, for example, to the United Nations Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People when they waited until they had overwhelming numbers of support so that the expected opposition of the United States and other countries was basically irrelevant? If you'd shed some light on that decision, we'd appreciate it. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Very quickly, the level of support has been incredible. And I have to again thank our partners from the developed world, the global north, who've actually contributed to the drafting of the question. And they brought incredible legal insight, not only about the court itself and how they would respond, but also about the way to phrase the question that wouldn't put off the historical emitters. Because it's really about human rights, which all nations have agreed is a principal, obligation. And so I think that's the difference, is that it is about protecting people and communities, which all of us agree to do. In terms of the support, we now expect that we will have that simple majority, and it won't be just from the developed world. The developing world. We're expecting absolutely Europe to be very strongly supportive. In fact, last week, there was an EU ACP meeting in Mozambique, and all 27 member states of the European Union voted in support of a resolution at that assembly to go ahead with this resolution. So we're really starting to see now this become global and not just from small island states or the developing world.
All righty, do we have any more questions from the audience?
Yeah, thank you, Excellencies, and everyone on the panel. While I applaud the effort that this alliance is seeking and building, I can't help but to think about the growing concern around the world of the reality that as we make these moves for progress, there are countries using very clever ways of stymieing and sometimes outright thwarting these efforts by implanting other countries or decision makers inside of the collective to figure out ways to foil your ways forward. How, with that growing concern and those possibilities, how does this collective seek to address that and prevent any of that sort of pervasion going in to presenting your cause to the International Court of Justice?
I think history has shown to date that we are where we are today because we were having actors that have been thwarting the goal of reversing the carbon footprint, the goal of seeking compensation for loss and damage. That has been a perennial issue. There will always be your detractors. The answer to that is remaining focused, remaining committed, and ensuring that you engage persons and hoping that they become altruistic in their goal like you may be. And I think it's just remaining focused and to not be distracted by those, what I call planted agents. We've had that before, haven't we? The Secretary and I are reminiscing about the same thought about planting agents amongst you. But to overcome that, just remaining focused and continuing engagement in all those who you believe to be detractors. You want to?
Can I say how much I agree with the Prime Minister to this extent? We've been on this journey for a long time. And if you look back at 1989, which I know was before some of us were born, everyone said when the Commonwealth made the commitment at Langkawi to address climate change that we were crazy, that this existential threat that we spoke of did not actually exist. And it was a figment of our nightmare, and therefore it should not be addressed. None of us gave up. And we kept on fighting, and we kept on fighting. And what's been wonderful is the Commonwealth is a very broad church. And to have got all of those countries in June to say the following: 1, we are committed to addressing climate change. 2, loss and damage must be on the agenda, and that we are all going to continue to drive to keep that 1.5 alive. It was the Commonwealth in 2015 in Malta which came up with enforceability, 2 degrees, and a 1.5 aspirational target. The Commonwealth countries, of then 53 countries, agreed it. Paris, in December, 1 month later, agreed. So no one on this panel is giving up. This ICJ request, I certainly understand, is a real moment of hope. And that's why I say, whichever side you are on in the divide, this is a question which needs to be asked, and I hope it will be validly answered. And it's very encouraging that so many have already signed up to have 86 nations saying, we want to ask this question and we want an answer to it, is really great. If all of the 28 states, now actually 27 states of Europe, say that they are with us, then it looks like Vanuatu may be over the line. And a bit like rugby, we hope the Pacific win.
All righty, we have time for one more question. Do we have any more from the audience?
Thank you, Your Excellencies, for coming and sharing your thoughts and your experiences. I come from South Asia, from India, and South Asia also experiences a lot of effects of climate change. So I was just wondering, what sort of support have you received from nations in South Asia? Or what kind of support do you expect from there? And if you're in a position to share that with us.
Well, I think I'm very pleased to see, if you look on the list, that Bangladesh is there. I would be very interested to see what, for example, Pakistan, who is suffering so desperately, will say in relation to this. We've had strong support always from all of our colleagues in and from Asia. They have been with us hand in glove all the way through in the Commonwealth, and I would be very surprised if they desert us now. But I speak very much as the Secretary General of the Commonwealth, and you'll notice that I said that we need all of those, on whichever side of the argument they happen to be able to come forward, give their evidence, have their say, so we get the question right, and then we can all be content with the answer. We're about the rule of law. We're about fairness. We're about inclusion. And we're about listening and working together to make sure we stay alive. Because I think we need to be really clear. This is a fight for humanity. It's a fight to save our world. There is not a plan B. There's only one Earth, it's ours, and we have to fight for it and fight now. And I say that because I feel so strongly about what's happening in my region, the Caribbean. My country, Dominica, is also flooded. Someone died yesterday from it. This is as real as it gets. And those we love are putting at risk their lives and their livelihoods. And we cannot close our eyes, none of us. This is our time.
All right, thank you very much, audience, for all of your questions. And, we've heard the panelists speak. We've heard that the impacts are unfolding right now. 3 of our countries have been impacted within the last 24 hours. 2 of them are happening right now. This is not a matter of climate impacts in the future. It's happening now, and we need to take action now. And with that, it's time to close. So the Commonwealth Foundation and Vanuatu's next event will be at the SDG Hub on Friday, the 11th. So that's this Friday at 6 p.m. Egypt time. And the event is entitled Small Islands, Climate Justice and International Law, Raising Ambitions for the SDGs and the Paris Agreement Commitment. So please join us. And you can continue this conversation by joining the Foundation's digital discussion platform. It's an innovative online discussion space for activists, practitioners, artists, and civil society leaders to network, share ideas, and build solidarity around issues we've discussed today. And I encourage you to join. We'll end today's discussion with the ICJ song performed by Vanessa Kwai, Stan Antas, and Sheila Wills, star musicians of Vanuatu.
What is happening to our world? Have you ever stopped to notice? What does it take for you to see? Lives are being lost. With all the storms raging, corals dying, ocean levels rising, it's a threat to our human rights. Fossil fuels burning us past 1.5 degrees. What are we gaining from this madness? Of people are in danger. We're calling out to you, International Court of Justice, an advisory opinion on human rights and climate change. We're calling out to you, United Nations, leaders of today, protect the rights of the human race. We're calling out to you.
Yeah, we have a duty to all of mankind. Legal obligations must stand to defend our rights.
This chance to get clarity from the International Court of Justice on the legal obligations in the struggle for survival with a million voices. Save the Paris Agreement, everyone must act. So better mankind, wake up now, it's not too late. Raise your voices up, speak for the children of tomorrow. With every forest burning, every person moving, every day is passing by, and time is running out. Bit by bit the world is heating over, and it seems to never end. We're calling out again.
We're calling out to you, International Court of Justice, an advisory opinion on human rights and climate change. We're calling can we be so blind, putting their lives in danger? Oh, the schools are damaged, cyclones hurting. Our healthcare is suffering, but we'll keep on raising our voices. International Court of Justice, advisory on human rights and climate change. We're calling out to you, United Nations. Lead us on today, protect the rights of the human race. We're calling out to you, International Court of Justice, an advisory opinion on human rights and climate change. We're calling out to you, United Nations. Lead us on today, protect the rights of the human race. We're calling out to you.
All righty, thank you very much. Goodbye.